Today is January 24th. Welcome to another episode of Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It is a joy and a privilege to be here with you today in this lifeboat of recovery as we journey on through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today we're going to be reading, finishing up Chapter 6 into action with pages 84 through 88. And we also will be journeying through Chapter 4, Step 4, of the 12 and 12, pages 48 and 49. So before we get into the book, I just want to apologize. I'm sure you could probably tell the last few days I've been suffering a little bit of a cold, a little sinus infection to kind of get us going through these winter months, but that's okay. It's to be expected, and the show must go on. So with that out of the way, let's get into the big book. All right, guys, so we're on page 84 today. For those of you who listened yesterday, we just wrapped up those beautiful 9-step promises. So now we're moving on to step 10. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests that we continue to take a personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately, and we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day that we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we become God-conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It'd be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe that we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here, we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised at how right the answers come after we've tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we will be shown all through the day of what our next step is to be. That we will be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right and make use of what they offer. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in a simple way that we have just outlined. But that is not all. There's action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. All right, so we will definitely come back to that in just a second. That concludes chapter 6 into action. Now we're moving on to the 12 and 12. This is page 48. We'll be reading pages 48 to the middle of page 49. Of course, the depressive and the power driver are personality extremes, types with which AA and the whole world abound. Often these personalities are just as sharply defined as the examples given. But just as often, some of us will fit more or less into both classifications. Human beings are never quite alike, so each of us, when making an inventory, will need to determine what his individual character defects are. Having found the shoes that fit, he ought to step into them and walk with new confidence that he is at last on the right track. Now, let's ponder the need for a list of the more glaring personality defects that all of us have in varying degrees. To those having religious training, such a list would set forth serious violations of moral principles. Some others will think of this list as defects of character. Still others will call it an index of maladjustments. Some will become quite annoyed if there's talk about immorality, let alone sin. But all who are in the least reasonable will agree upon one point. Now, there is plenty wrong with us alcoholics, about which plenty will have to be done if we are to expect sobriety, progress, and any real ability to cope with life. To avoid falling into confusion over the names these defects should be called, let's take a universally recognized list of major human failings. The 7 deadly sins of pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. It is not by accident that pride heads the procession. For pride, leading to self-justification, and always spurred by conscious or unconscious fears, is the basic breeder of most human difficulties, and the chief block to true progress. Pride lures us into making demands upon ourselves or upon others which cannot be met without perverting or misusing our God-given instincts. When the satisfaction of our instincts for sex, security, and society become the sole object of our lives, then pride steps in to justify our excesses. All these failings generate fear, a soul sickness in its own right. Then fear, in turn, generates more character defects. Unreasonable fear that our instincts will not be satisfied drives us to covet the possessions of others, to lust for sex and power, to become angry when our instinctive demands are threatened, to be envious when the ambitions of others seem to be realized while ours were not. We eat, drink, and grab more of everything than we need, fearing that we shall never have enough. And with genuine alarm at the prospect of work, we stay lazy. We loaf and procrastinate, or at best, work grudgingly and under half steam. These fears are the termites that ceaselessly devour the foundations of whatever sort of life we try to build. All right, so while this is fresh, oh my goodness, fear is a powerful thing that drives, just like he said, so many of my issues that I had. I didn't realize how fearful I really was. I didn't think I was until I started doing this moral inventory. When I wrote everything down and a friend of mine read through the list, he brought out all the fears. The reason you acted so selfishly here is because you were being fearful. You were afraid that somebody would leave you, or you were afraid that you wouldn't have enough for your family, or whatever it might be. He brought out a lot of the stuff. He got down to the root of a lot of my troubles where I couldn't see it. So this inventory was really eye-opening, and I didn't realize how fearful I had been living. These fears are the termites that ceaselessly, that means endlessly, they will not stop. They ceaselessly devour the foundations of whatever sort of life we try to build. And then going back to the big book real quick, I absolutely love the breakdown of steps 10 and 11 in the rest of this chapter into action. I love how literally it takes us through the day of tips that we can apply in our prayer life. It starts off, when we retire at night, we can constructively review our day and just go through the checklist. Was I resentful today, Rob? Was I selfish, dishonest, afraid? Do I owe somebody an amends? Have I kept something to myself that I should discuss with another person? All right. And then on awakening the next day, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. Before I can even consider my plans, God, please direct my thinking. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. So this is throughout the day, the daytime hours. I love this line here. Here we ask God for inspiration and intuitive thought or decision. I love this. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. Once again, talking about fear earlier, when I make decisions based on fear, usually they're impulsive decisions, selfish decisions that get me into trouble. If I just relax and take it easy, realize I'm not the one in control here, things usually seem to go a little bit better. I love it. One last thing I'll say is about step 10 and 11 here. I love this line here. It says, we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. If anyone's like me who's wrestled with self-hatred, oh man, that one's a big one. If I messed up, especially early on in my recovery, I would beat myself up so much. I can't believe I did this. I'm supposed to know better than this by now. I'm supposed to be so much better. I'm supposed to be growing. And then I would beat myself up, right? But it says right here, we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. That would diminish our usefulness to others. So I make my amends. After making our review, we ask God for forgiveness. So I ask for forgiveness. And I inquire what corrective measures should be taken next time. So in other words, get right back on the horse. Keep working the steps. Life is short, and there's no time and there's no room for self-hatred. And with all that, guys, I'm so glad you are here with me today. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. So grateful for these steps and this big book and that Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 and 12. I hope you all have a great day, and we will see you back here tomorrow.